Ladies and gentlemen, this is history in the making. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. This is huge. This is an article from Just the News by Jerry Dunleavy and John Solomon. Subscribe to Just the News. It is a brilliant publication. Apparently, Comey and others allegedly tried to destroy notes, emails. They used private emails. We don't know if they had private servers like Hillary Clinton with top secret intelligence on them illegally transferred, but Comey used private emails to converse with his liaison to the media as he allegedly leaked information, possibly classified information, to the media to create a fake, phony narrative. This ties directly with conspiracy statutes that will be leveled against Brennan, Comey, and Hillary Clinton and others later this year, in about 4, 5, 6 months. Towards the beginning of 2026. But this is huge, ladies and gentlemen. This is game, set, match in terms of the evidence needed to convict. Up until now, and you'll hear about the burn bags in a second, they tried to incinerate, allegedly, they tried to destroy the notes. There are handwritten notes that were unearthed by Comey where he knew about the plan to set up and frame Trump by Hillary Clinton. So Comey, Boomerang ex-director, confronted with personal emails, notes after playing victim card. Hit subscribe. Go to H.A. Goodman's other channel after this. This is very interesting, ladies and gentlemen. They tried to incinerate all the evidence, which is why the judge in the case is saying, hey, you're indicting first and investigating later. It's like, well, all the evidence was destroyed or hidden. Hit subscribe, watch this, and go to H.A. Goodman's other channel after this to my super chat. Thank you. Your support is so greatly appreciated.
Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett, former FBI special agent, Fox News contributor Nicole Parker. Nicole, burn bags, not a common term that the average person may know. You're very familiar with it because of your time in the FBI.
That's right. So first of all, I'm not shocked by anything that we're hearing, having worked there for over a dozen years. Absolutely nothing shocks me about what may have happened at the FBI. That's one of the reasons that I left. But when I hear burn bag, that's common lingo inside the FBI. All documentation, documents, anything that you basically use or touch at the FBI goes into a burn bag. And sometimes you shred the documents, sometimes you just put them straight into the burn bag. But those documents are literally escorted to an incinerator by armed agents. I mean, it's a very serious process because we must take our documentation very seriously at the FBI, and that is what they do. And so to hear that documentation was found at FBI headquarters in burn bags that were never taken to an incinerator is baffling, but at the same time, it's not baffling, Sean. And there are a number of reasons that could have occurred. I wouldn't be shocked if it was just someone that wasn't doing their job, or someone that just put them in a room and thought, you know what, someone else will deal with that. Or if it was someone who is, high level in the FBI and isn't actually familiar with what the rank and file agents do in taking things to the incinerator to have burned.
Or it could be somebody who didn't want to be implicated in the upcoming indictments of Comey and Brennan and Clinton and others. Maybe somebody wanted a record of what James Comey knew. Apparently, all this evidence was destroyed or in the process of being destroyed and now recently discovered.
There are a number of reasons that this could have occurred, but the key is that these documents were found.
Let's talk about this, Greg Jarrett. We spent 3 long years unpeeling every layer of the onion on this story. Seems kind of sloppy that if they had incriminating materials, which is what I'm assuming here they found in these burn bags, that they didn't take care of those and eliminate that. And I bet that's causing a lot of agita and anxiety in the minds of a number of names that would be very familiar to this audience.
Yeah, it could be somebody who didn't want to be a party to a crime by burning them, because attempting to destroy or conceal evidence is the crime of obstruction of justice, Sean, if it's done to hide documents relevant to a criminal or congressional investigation or in anticipation of one. So these documents are not just relevant, they may be pivotal. So that's point number 1 on obstruction. Point number two is Senator Charles Grassley has been investigating the collusion hoax and those behind it for years, which is why these burn bag documents were turned over to him. So the question becomes, who ordered the planned burning? Why did they do it? Although the why to me seems readily self-evident. Whoever was involved was trying to conceal evidence that they didn't like, things that might implicate them. And it doesn't matter if the material was classified, you still cannot destroy it if it relates to an investigation. Go ahead.
One of the documents FBI officials allegedly found in the burn bag were the classified annex, to former special counsel John Durham's final report, which includes the underlying intelligence that he reviewed. Why would that be so critical? To me, that's critical.
Because it likely reveals many of the government actors who instigated and corruptly spread the phony collusion narrative despite knowing it was totally untrue. So, it's the usual suspects. Was it Comey and his acolytes at the FBI, Brennan's team of CIA partisans? Was it Clapper, the Obama White House? They're all reasonable suspects based on the damning evidence revealed in just the last couple of weeks, leading to an official criminal investigation. And, in my two books, I identified all the people who appear to have lied under oath, committed crimes. So it doesn't surprise me that incriminating evidence of lies and lying people was slated for the incinerator. There was never a Trump-Russia collusion conspiracy, but there was a conspiracy to frame Donald Trump.
Is this
about this shocking discovery?
So the evidence, almost certainly there are mountains of documents, notes, emails from Comey and Brennan and everyone. Okay, they're very likely holding their cards very close to their chest. The DOJ, Pam Bondi, they're very likely, and Kash Patel, they likely have a trove of all the handwritten notes. That's why they didn't give the judge all the evidence for discovery. And the judge said, well, you're indicting first and investigating later. Well, a lot of this was destroyed. They were either in the process of destroying evidence or they failed to destroy and incinerate the handwritten notes, which implicate Comey. Both Comey and Brennan lied, stating that they didn't know who purchased the dossier. They really thought that Trump was working with Russia. All of this nonsense. They made up everything. But there's a paper trail that proves that, especially the notes that were not destroyed.
Made inside the FBI. This was incredible. Sources telling Fox News Digital that Director Kash Patel found a tranche of documents related to the Trump-Russia probe inside multiple burn bags. These burn bags are used to destroy highly classified information. Now, we don't know the nature of the documents just yet and whether anything was actually destroyed. But, of course, Director Patel told me about this back in May, that these documents existed and were soon to come to light. Watch.
As much as we know about Crossfire Hurricane, he and I just found out more last week, and we're continuing to work with Congress to put those documents out. That's how vindictive and vicious the former leadership structure here was. Not only did they bastardize the FISA process and lie to the American public, they withheld and hid documentation and put it in rooms where people weren't supposed to look. And it's a good thing we're here now to clean it up, and you're about to see a wave of transparency.
But are you saying you found things that even you didn't know about?
Yes.
Yes.
You better believe the Washington Post, the New York Times, the ladies at The View, Jimmy Kimmel would be all over this. That's why people don't trust media. That's why 70% of Americans don't trust media. It is unfortunate. American politics, modern American politics is President Trump, Kash Patel, Tulsi Gabbard, Pam Bondi, Dan Bongino, John Radcliffe, all trying to find out what Democrats and former intel officials did to set up and frame Trump, and media these former intel officials, loyalists within the government, operatives, the Democratic Party, trying to hide and say, catch me if you can. You can't catch me. You can't prove anything. You can't find out. It's like, well, we all know they set up and framed Trump. The question is, how did they do it? That's a pretty simple answer. Now that we're finding handwritten notes leading back to potentially people like Comey, potentially, possibly, it's pretty easy to prove in a court of law.
I was the lead Russiagate investigator for the House Intelligence Committee. I'm telling you and the American public that we have now found material and information and people who wanted to hide it from the world.
Now, that was back in May. Fox News Digital reporting one of those documents is the classified annex to Special Counsel John Durham's report, which is now headed to the Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley for release. CIA Director John Ratcliffe broke the news about this annex on Sunday with me on Sunday Morning Futures. Watch.
What hasn't come out yet and what's going to come out is the underlying intelligence that I have spent the last few months making recommendations about final declassification and sent that to the Department of Justice that will come out in the John Durham report classified annex. And what that intelligence shows, Maria, is that part of this was a Hillary Clinton plan, but part of it was an FBI plan to be an accelerant to that fake Steele dossier, to those fake Russia collusion claims by pouring oil on the fire, by amplifying the lie and burying the truth of what Hillary Clinton was up to. And you're right, Maria. John Brennan testified to John Durham in August of 2020. He also testified to the House Oversight Committee in 2022. Hillary Clinton testified before John Durham under oath in 2022. James Comey testified before the Senate committee in September 2020. All of that's within the last 5 years. And much of that testimony is, frankly, completely inconsistent with what our underlying intelligence that is about to be declassified in the Durham Annex, what that reflects.
Yeah, this is going to be something when this comes out soon, Todd. It's going to show that the FBI had plans to be an accelerant, as he said, throwing oil on the fire.
Despite
something to read.
Yeah, and despite Democrats insisting throughout the last couple of weeks that there was nothing new here, clearly there is a lot new, and it was contained in these bags. But
so the catch me if you can mentality of everyone who conspired against Trump, you can't prove it. It's really interesting to see all these very smart people, these websites and these pundits and these journalists who are legal and national security scholars, and they're writing things like, well, where's the lie? You can't prove anything. It's like, but that Kash Patel just found the handwritten notes that you failed to incinerate. Okay. So then there's emails also. There's private emails. Everything that was ever typed at the FBI, the CIA almost certainly has a copy of. So, I mean, it's like John Ratcliffe has the keys to the castle. Okay, we went from Brennan to Ratcliffe, from Clapper to Tulsi Gabbard, from Comey to Kash Patel, and from, we went from William Barr and Merrick Garland to Pam Bondi. So it's game, set, match. And if you think I'm passionate about this, multiply that energy times 20,000 or a billion. That's President Trump and everyone around. Because there has to be, if they committed crimes, which they almost certainly did, there needs to be accountability. You can't set up and frame an incoming candidate. There has to be legal accountability for potential crimes, possible potential crimes that Comey and Brennan committed. And the entire planet knows that James Comey and John Brennan lied. Even the people defending them know this. What they're doing is a very sophomoric type of catch me if you can game. Well, you can't prove anything. It's like, well, yeah, they can. They didn't incinerate the evidence within burn bags. So there you go.
Maria, this leads to a question that I just can't figure out. If they were in burn bags, and obviously
Coach O'Connor, thank you. Paul Bartlett, thank you. To my super chat, thank you, everybody. Hey, we've been on this adventure within U.S. history for years. Coach O'Connor and Paul Bartlett in Australia, thank you. We've been on this journey together. It's an honor for me to have such a beautiful and awesome and intelligent viewership around the world. And we've been watching this for years. And have I not been telling you, ladies and gentlemen, that President Trump eventually is going to indict all of these people because they lied when they first cheated Bernie Sanders, when they first transferred classified data onto secret servers, and then they cheated Biden. Biden got the worst treatment of all. He won his primary. He was forced out. Hey, let's continue. Thanks to my super chat, Coach O'Connor. Paul Bartlett, thank you.
The outgoing administration, the outgoing FBI infrastructure knew that, there was going to be a new president on Inauguration Day. That is scheduled. We know Inauguration's days between now and the end of time. Why didn't they burn what was in the burn bags by then? Did they underestimate Trump and the incoming administration?
Because there's very likely a lot of people, whether they're Andrew McCabe types who oppose Comey, maybe not outwardly, but with the Inspector General report, you had Andrew McCabe and James Comey opposing one another, saying each person lied. These are thousands, tens of thousands of people at the FBI and CIA, and there are different people. Even if there were people that were on board with Comey and Brennan, they understand now the political winds have changed. If you live by the intel community, then the political demise might be linked to the intel community.
That much that they wouldn't discover this information. It seems odd to underestimate a guy who won the presidency not once but twice and made it known to everybody that he was going to be coming in here guns blazing with loyalists who were going to do what they needed to do to get to the bottom of it. So why wasn't this stuff burned if it was in burn bags by the last administration?
Well, I mean, destroying evidence is a big deal.
Oh, I understand, but you put it past this cabal in the intel. They created a Russia hoax.
Yeah.
You think burning the evidence is past them?
No.
So they couldn't burn all the evidence. They couldn't destroy it all because almost certainly the CIA has everything, and probably the NSA has everything on both of those agencies.
Guys. Thank you. Director, earlier this year, the committee learned of new documents tied to the crossfire hurricane investigation and the Russia collusion hoax against President Trump. Your efforts in declassifying key documents tied to this investigation allowed the committee to acquire thousands of pages that it did not have previously. Did any of your predecessors make any effort to declassify these documents?
Not to the extent we have.
Did any of your predecessors share or leak any details that were classified at the time?
There are ongoing leak investigations across.
The answer is, of course, yes. Potentially, possibly Comey, Brennan, all of these people being McCabe, all of these people leaking through liaisons. So Comey implicated people around him, one in particular, leaking information to the New York Times and others, the Washington Post and others. And this is like the whole thing is, well, you can't prove anything. It's like, well, yeah, there's evidence that Kash Patel and Pam Bondi and all of them have that have not been destroyed. So the issue now for the defense is Comey should find out, well, what evidence hasn't been destroyed? Because if he wanted to, if his and Brennan's goal was to leave FBI and CIA and completely remove or erase or destroy or obstruct any paper trail or digital footprint or all the notes that they wrote, well, what are the chances that incriminating evidence in handwritten notes still exist? Gee, maybe there are a lot of handwritten notes from all of these people that still exist.
Across the board at the Bureau related to this.
I believe one of those is Mr. Comey, and I thank you for continuing that investigation. Among the declassified documents are the Durham Report Annex, the cross.
Thank you for watching on the live stream, everybody. To my viewers for a long time, thank you so much for watching.
Crossfire Binder, and the Nellie Orr Criminal Referral. Could you summarize?
Nellie Orr Criminal Referral, blast from the past, trip down memory lane. I can assure you that 99.9% of wonderful, morally superior liberal Democrats have no clue who that is. These are Department of Justice officials during Trump's first administration who potentially, like the Honorable James Comey, potentially, helped frame and set up Trump and everybody around him.
For those watching, that what we know about the Russia collusion hoax so far?
Well, sir, I think the record will speak that the Russia collusion matter was perpetrated by a political party to go overseas and obtain information from a foreign intelligence asset, only to have that information, which was demonstrably false, turned over to the FBI, who walked into a federal FISA secret court and asked for a secret surveillance court order and lied to the federal court, and we know that because someone was convicted of it, and only to surveil the political opponent. So that is a massive scandal. We helped expose it. And in terms of the pages of productions, I provided 1,400 pages of production related to Crossfire Hurricane, and my predecessors have provided 0.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate your courage and commitment to declassifying these important documents for our review, and hope that you'll continue with this commitment. Can we expect to see more declassification efforts regarding the Crossfire Hurricane and Russia collusion hoax?
Yes.
Thank you. I yield the remaining balance of my time to Chairman Jordan.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. And Director, that's when it all started, right? The whole Russia, that's when it all began. And then it was Mueller, then it was impeachment, then it was Jack Smith and Fonnie Willis and Alvin Bragg and you name it. But it all started then. And that's why I think the gentleman from Texas wants to make sure we get all the information there. And I want to go back to when it was changed. We talked about this earlier. I just want to read to you what the CIA officer said to the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Quote, Brennan refused to remove the dossier, and when confronted with the dossier's main flaws, he responded, yes, but doesn't it ring true? So that's what he initially said. And then when he was talking to this committee, he said the CIA was very much opposed to having any reference or inclusion of the Steele dossier in the intelligence community assessment. So on one hand, you got a witness who was there who said he refused to remove it even though he knew it was garbage. And then he's, on the other hand, telling the committee, no, we didn't want anything to do with it. It shouldn't have been a part of the intelligence community assessment, which we know it was. You know it was. You found that. Those are two entirely different stories. And I think Mr. Brennan has some explaining to do, frankly, what happened there. And I think you said earlier that this whole thing, and I think you said to Mr. Gooden, this whole thing is being looked at as part of this grand conspiracy to undermine the president, whether it's Comey, Brennan, Clapper, former head of the Intelligence Committee, now senator from, whoever it is, that's all being looked at. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Well, we appreciate that. And part of what's also being looked at, and I think the gentleman from Wisconsin brought this up earlier, what is a burn bag for, by the way?
Generally speaking, the intelligence community obviously utilizes and possesses classified documents, but drafts of those classified documents and even ultimate finished products of those classified documents have to be recorded and or discarded. And if they are discarded, the only way we do that, the hard copies, is we literally put them in burn bags that are identified specifically for that purpose. And there is a very exact courier system in which those burn bags are obtained and the material inside is destroyed.
So the highly educated, morally superior, the legal scholars, the attorneys, the national security aficionados, well, this is normal. There's nothing wrong with that. Well, if it was a handwritten note about Comey and a potential, Russian plot to convince us that Hillary wanted to set up and frame Trump. Well, that's what the Russians want you to think. Well, of course they do. They'd want to destroy that. I mean, that's would be classified, wouldn't it? And it's like, you're trying to justify the indefensible, defending the indefensible, as always. if there's evidence that showed that Comey and Brennan intentionally used bureaucracy to set up and frame Trump, in the form of emails or handwritten notes or memos or documents, and those were destroyed, that's obstruction of justice because you're destroying evidence. And it's like, there's no way they couldn't destroy enough documents or handwritten notes for them not to be convicted ultimately. Because now the CIA has almost certainly, the intel agencies have access to emails that were written 10, 20, 30 years ago. Or no, email. Okay. Yeah, emails written 10, 20 years ago.
So it's to get rid of the material, right?
Yes, sir.
And it looks like the annex that Mr. Durham in his investigation had was put into a burn bag by your predecessor, I assume, to be destroyed. Is that accurate?
Without getting into the stylization of the evidence, anything that's put in a burn bag is for purposes of destruction.
Do you find that interesting that the Durham annex was placed in a burn bag, that you would discover that when you took over as the head of the FBI?
We found a lot of information in a lot of burn bags.
We found a lot of information in a lot of bags. And look at him. He knows. He knows. He knows that they have the goods on everyone to set up and frame Trump, almost certainly. If James Comey committed crimes, if John Brennan committed crimes, then they almost certainly have all the evidence needed to convict. Just has to go to trial. There's a 10% chance, 10% chance that it doesn't go to trial because of the appointment of the federal prosecutor. But there's like a 90% chance it continues because I think Pam Bondi likely knew the protocol better than people writing in, publications stating, oh yeah, that who knows? I could be wrong. But there's an issue with 120 days and being an interim prosecutor. So we'll see. If it goes to trial, it's going to be very difficult. So this is almost a certain conviction because you have evidence that keeps being uncovered. And that's for future indictments as well.
And an action-packed 7 months for the Trump administration. But for everything that you see and hear on the news, there is so much more happening behind the scenes. At the FBI, the director, Kash Patel, is working around the clock with Dan Bongino and others and other agents. Not only are they dealing with the crime crisis left behind by Joe Biden and unvetted illegals, 12 to 20 million of them, but also peeling back the layers of what has been what we have reported as a deeply politicized, weaponized federal bureaucracy. For example, Kash Patel, the FBI director, recently uncovered thousands and thousands of Russia hoax documents inside these burn bags in a secret room at the FBI. The director also discovered official allegations from a Democratic staffer who accused Adam Schiff of orchestrating leaks of classified intelligence in order to hurt President Trump. Those allegations had been swept under the rug at the FBI until now, and that's not all. According to a bombshell report from justthenews.com founder, editor-in-chief John Solomon, James Comey also accused of routinely leaking classified information to the New York Times through a friend, a professor at Columbia University. Just the tip of the iceberg.
The article in question in the New York Times, the defense is that, well, it was public record knowledge. There's one segment of the article that talks about Anthony Weiner. That wasn't public knowledge. James Comey testified to that Uma Abedin was sending classified data to Anthony Weiner. You've seen that on this channel, that testimony numerous times. That wasn't public record in November of 2016. When the Comey article and all these articles were like, James Comey's tough decision. It's all to remake, renew his image, to reshape his image. It was public relations. It was Comey's letter that sunk Clinton's campaign. Even though I said Clinton was going to lose somehow, there was so much corruption, it was unbelievable. But it was actually Comey's letter. Thank God Comey wrote that letter because we had President Trump. But that wasn't the Russians. I mean, the Clinton campaign themselves wanted to elevate Trump. So that's what, within their own emails, they said that. Then they said, oh, Russia wanted to. How could Russia and the Clinton campaign both want to elevate Trump? But anyway, let's continue.
Anyway, here with the very latest, FBI Director Kash Patel. Kash, great to have you.
One of
burn room. Now, your knowledge of this issue runs wide and it runs deep because you were working with Devin Nunes at the time. I believe you were his chief of staff. You know a lot about this topic. Were you as surprised as I was that all of that information in that burn room existed?
Sean, I was blown away, but sadly, it's come to be expected in this town when corrupt bureaucrats weaponize and destroy law enforcement like predecessors of mine did at the FBI. And thankfully, Donald Trump's mandate and election victory was for transparency and accountability. Sean, just think about this for a second. Not only did we expose the Russiagate hoax with the greats like Devin and Trey and Johnny Ratcliffe when we were back there in the House Intel Committee excavating and exposing the FISA abuses, the corruption of political parties, and the lies to a federal court just to illegally surveil a presidential candidate. I come in then years later, nearly a decade as a director of the FBI, thinking we uncovered most of it. But sadly, we found a room locked away in the Hoover building that contained burn bags. And just for your audience, Sean, a burn bag is a government bag that is specifically created to destroy classified evidence and shred and burn it. Hence the name burn bag. We didn't find one, we found 7. That wasn't the only thing we found in there. We found hard drives from our predecessors and prior FBI leadership and folks like Page, Strzok, Comey, McCabe, Comey, the list goes on from Russiagate. The names were strewn all over these materials. Now, as our great Attorney General just told you, we can't deny or confirm what we're looking at, but what we can discuss is what we've publicly disclosed. And these documents have been publicly disclosed because the greatest way to educate and bring along the American public for transparency, initiative, and accountability under President Trump is to give them the documents. And
this isn't the first time they destroyed evidence. The Mueller probe had phones wiped clean, and the media actually stated it was just a coincidental erasing of data, like the phone would reset. It was just coincidental. This is why nobody trusts media. It's unbelievable. Then there was Hillary Clinton's lawyers went to Home Depot. They bought hammers and just breaking things left and right, breaking. And then the Honorable James Comey said, we couldn't find intent. We just couldn't find intent. You couldn't find intent on breaking cell phones with hammers? What couldn't you find? They wanted to destroy evidence. And they had we couldn't find intent on the secret servers. Gosh. How do you set up a secret server connected to U.S. government networks that transfers top secret intelligence? It's impossible to do from a cybersecurity perspective. Inherent in that is the intent to commit crimes. They couldn't find intent. And then you have Uma Abedin forwarding classified data, which is why he wrote the Comey letter, which is what was in the New York Times article, which is impossible to have found out without leaking.
Step 1 is by cleaning house inside the walls of Hoover.
Okay, well, one of the important things you got to remember is that's the FBI's job. You gather the evidence, and then it is examined, in this case, by the Attorney General, Pam Bondi. And, but there's been a lot of talk and a lot written about the investigation into a grand conspiracy. To the extent possible, what can you tell us about that? In other words, that this is long-standing. If it is, in fact, a grand conspiracy, the statute of limitations would be eliminated. Is that what the investigation is about?
Well, Sean, what we're doing is building a case for the American public under the Truth and Transparency and Accountability Initiative. And what I mean by that is AG Bondi brilliantly highlighted our partners, Director Ratcliffe at the CIA and Director Gabbard over at the DNI. We are working with them because the documents that would facilitate an investigation of this magnitude don't just rest at the FBI and DOJ. They're throughout the intelligence community. And we, the Russiagate guys like Johnny Ratcliffe and myself who investigated this and exposed this, are trying to expose documentation that we've known existed for years. At the same time, we're finding new material. So the best approach is to release this information with them and also go to our colleagues in Congress who have an oversight function on the judiciary committees and oversight committees and demand from us information and documentation that we can publicize. Things like the Durham Annex, which we've known have existed this entire time, but were classified for political reasons. We are educating the American public as we build through this transparency initiative. And where the investigation goes, I can assure you of this. We will max accountability for the American public. We delivered before when we ran the Russiagate investigation. I now happen to be President Trump's choice for FBI director, and I'm honored to lead that charge with our great partners in Johnny Ratcliffe and our great Attorney General and the prosecutors they have over there who are just as committed to justice as everyone should be, blindly so. We are going to de-weaponize the FBI and get its credibility back to the American people by delivering the accountability they need, by showing them what we're doing every step of the way. That has never been done before.
Restoring the FBI to its former greatness. That would be the words I would use to describe what needs to be done and I hope can be done. If we look at the declassified materials, for example, that Tulsi Gabbard released,
they haven't even released probably 1/100th of everything they have. And already there's enough to convict.
We already had an intelligence assessment as on the question of whether or not Donald Trump colluded with Vladimir Putin. Here I am in Alaska. They will have a summit tomorrow. And in fact, the conclusion of senior career intelligence officials was it did not happen. There's no evidence at all that it happened. Then the report suggests that Barack Obama himself, along with his top intel officials, that would probably be people like Brennan and Clapper and maybe some others, decided to do a new intelligence assessment because they didn't like the old one. And they got a narrative that moved forward. But yet also they added something, and I believe it was John Brennan that said they did not do this, but then they used the Hillary Clinton bought and paid for Russian disinformation dossier. That was also used by James Comey for the FISA applications. He signed 3 of the 4. He was warned in August of 2016 not to use it. And then we knew definitively by December of 2016 that, in fact, that dossier had been debunked and that Christopher Steele was incredible. So the question is a timeline.
What's better after 50?
Add that to the 2020 election and the fact that by March of 2020, they knew Hunter's laptop, they had verified its authenticity and that it was real. And then they're pre-bunking it by meeting weekly with big tech companies. And then when it gets dropped, which they knew would happen because of Rudy Giuliani's attorney, they knew Bob Costello had a copy. Are they putting cinder blocks on the scales of elections? Was weaponization from 2020 to 2024 designed to bloody up Trump? In other words, do we have 3 presidential elections potentially?
Trump and Trump Republicans would not have been stopped at any point were it not for Mueller, media, Jimmy Kimmel, Hollywood, social media algorithms. You think Biden would have won more votes than any president ever if there was actual investigative journalism about Hunter's laptop? That's why 51 intelligence officials lied through their teeth. That's why Brennan will get indicted on a whole bunch of things, because he lied during that investigation. And then he goes, Brennan, it's interesting. He goes, I never said it was Russian disinformation. I said it has all the hallmarks of a Russian operation. It's like, what? The hilarious attempt to whitewash overt lies. It's unbelievable. But again, people don't care. There are wonderful, morally superior liberal Democrats who are against ICE and against capital punishment, but celebrated when Charlie Kirk was murdered. Think about the contradiction, not only the hypocrisy, think about the warped moral code There are wonderful, highly educated, morally superior Democrats who are good, wonderful people. That's true. I'm not being facetious. There are beautiful human beings who happen to be wonderful, morally superior, highly educated, liberal Democrats. And they don't like Trump's mean words. And they don't like ICE. Even though Democrats will never reform any deportation statutes, they'll just go after law enforcement after they defended law enforcement for one day in January of 2021. But anyway, it takes 3 weeks for wonderful, morally superior liberal Democrats to start keying Teslas. But think about the contorted moral code of somebody who dislikes ICE and finds Charlie Kirk's words reprehensible, who finds conservative ideals reprehensible, is against capital punishment, but then celebrated the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Think about that. What kind of intellect must you have to celebrate the passing of a conservative voice while at the same time opposing capital punishment for the most vicious crimes?
That cinder blocks were put on the scales of the election so the results would come out the way one team wanted it to come out. The team in power.
Here's the beauty of it, Sean. You don't have to trust me or trust you. That's all. Everything you recited, the summary you just gave, is years of excavating documents that these deep state actors held and buried and documented their own corruption because they were arrogant enough to think no one would ever find it, that Donald Trump would never become president and appoint a cabinet that would go in and investigate this matter thoroughly. And when you start connecting the dots, here's what I learned, Sean, when I ran the Russiagate investigation. As bad as the crime is, the corruption cover-up from senior government officials who are sworn to uphold their duties and accountability for the American public, they are the ones that violated that trust the most internally and need to be held accountable. So the people you've listed and the names you're calling out aren't surprises. Their names are on those documents. Those documents are public. The FISA is public. The 302s are public. The Strzok page texts are public. Documents are being released weekly by Johnny Ratcliffe and Tulsi, making it public. The burn bag information is coming out. The Durham Annex is coming out. The classified appendix is coming out. The American people are going to see and hear the names themselves, and they can touch and feel it. As far as what my investigators are going to do, these guys are the best in the business, and we've assembled a team of accountability, and we're going to deliver for the American people.
So now we have 20 to 30 subpoenas to testify before grand jury pertaining to all of the people who set up and framed Trump.
Grand jury has subpoenaed 3 high-ranking Obama-era officials because, of course, when you're a communist, spying on your enemies and having secret police is all part of the deal. And so the Justice Department is now, under Donald Trump, investigating, and they have the Trump-Russia probe.
Sources telling Fox News more subpoenas are on the way. Chinley Painter here with the latest details. Good morning, Chinley.
Hey, guys. So law enforcement sources to Fox News Digital say that up to 30 subpoenas related to the probe will be issued in the coming days.
So that was unheard of. And it's almost certain that all of these people will turn on each other. If Comey has a chance to turn on Strzok and Page, he'll do so. He already turned on McCabe. McCabe turned on him during the IG report. Brennan will turn on everyone. Everyone will probably turn on Brennan. And remember when they were like, with Trump, and everyone's going to flip and sing and then tell and then sing about how they colluded with the Russians. Oh, the Russians. I stubbed my toe. It's the Russians. They blamed everything on Russia, which was the most, you'd have to be a complete imbecile to believe it. But like Strzok, for example, the gentleman in the middle, he never explained how Clinton transferred top secret intelligence onto servers. Neither did Comey. Nobody knows. Nobody cares. But it's impossible from a cybersecurity perspective. You cannot do that. You don't even have to have an intellect to understand. Even John Brennan knows that. You can't transfer top secret intelligence onto servers. But nobody in the midterm exam, mid-year exam, when even the names Crossfire Hurricane, That was them setting up and framing Trump mid-year exam. That was them covering up Clinton email probe. But then you have Strzok and Page to the right who texted, "We'll stop Trump." And then, of course, media was like, "Oh, they didn't really mean that. They meant something else." Like, you know what? If Trump said we'll stop Clinton, it would be part of the myth that they created.
It's all part of the Justice Department's investigation into the origins of the Trump-Russia probe. We know a federal grand jury has subpoenaed former CIA Director John Brennan and former FBI officials Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. The Brennan investigation came after CIA Director John Ratcliffe this summer declassified a new lessons learned review that determined the CIA, FBI, and national security agencies' intelligence community.
Every time Radcliffe and Kash Patel speak about this, they have like this look like, wait till you find out what we have. Wait till you find out what wasn't incinerated in the bags. There's so much evidence now that it's almost certain. Then you have whistleblowers, and then you have people who probably worked with Comey and Brennan and all these people who are now turning and saying, wait a second, I don't want to be indicted for a failed attempt at stopping Trump. So then they turn on Brennan and Comey. So like right now, the indictment of Comey is one lie that they're like so confident about. Everyone's like, oh, you can't prove it. It's like, well, the conspiracy statutes, that's a grand jury already in Florida, I believe. And there's like 30 people going to be indicted. There's 30 people subpoenaed, but there's 30 people, more than 30 who set up and framed Trump. But I mean, there's a criminal referral for the DOJ official that they brought up. That name hasn't been heard in years.
Assessment, or the ICA, examining Russia's interference in the 2016 presidential election, deviated from intelligence standards that led to some, quote, procedural anomalies. And records also declassified further revealed that Brennan pushed for the Steele dossier, a discredited anti-Trump document, to be included in that 2017 ICA, even though he testified differently to the House Judiciary Committee in May 2023. Here is Brennan commenting in July about the FBI criminal investigation.
I'm really shocked that, individuals who are willing to sacrifice their reputations, their credibility, their decency to continue to do.
See, I don't dislike any of these people. I don't dislike Comey or Brennan or Hillary Clinton. You have to see, I don't have derangement syndrome like they have with Trump. I find this very amusing. I find it hilarious and amusing, but also sad and somewhat pathetic. But I almost appreciate the acting, the theatrical performance, even though it's sinister. And I understand how dangerous how terrible it was for the country to plunge us into a new Cold War. But he's still acting. They are all acting. Who is he speaking to? To whom is he speaking to? Or whatever. The point is, who is he pretending? Like, why is he still pretending? He's speaking to the part of the country that voted in Democrats in Virginia, that will vote Democrat no matter what, that lost miserably in November of 24. Lost every battleground state, lost every swing state, lost the popular vote. He's speaking to those people. They'll believe anything. If John Brennan tomorrow said they had, when he was CIA chief, evidence that Trump tried to sell the planet to Martians, you better believe there would be picketing signs the next day. No king can sell the planet to Martians. Stop Trump. Bad. They'll believe anything. The people that believed Russiagate.
Do Donald Trump's bidding on something that clearly is just politically based.
As far as Strzok and Page, they first came under scrutiny in 2018 when the Justice Department uncovered a series of anti-Trump text messages between them. Both were assigned to work on Special Counsel Robert Mueller's team in 2017. And Strzok, he's the FBI agent who in July 2016 opened the FBI's initial Russia investigation. Guys?
All right. Chanley, thank you very much. And, it's so important to keep in mind that the biggest fracture of we talk about constitutional crises. The biggest fracture, I think, in our lifetime was when the Obama administration decided at the height of a presidential campaign that they were going to launch a federal investigation into the campaign, into their opponent, their leading opponent. And everything that has happened since then is downstream from that decision. And it was a decision made in the Oval Office by Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and all of those characters.
And I always say, we're still living in 2016. We entered a portal, this kind of Matrix world. 2016 was the last moment where, actually 2015. Maybe the beginning of 2015 was the last moment when media wasn't leveled. Media, the American government, intel agencies, late night, they weren't leveled against Trump or Republicans. Since then, you had such fabricated tribalism. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah. And it had such a pernicious effect because then January 6th came and they thought, oh, now we've got this new January 6th. Oh, and then they tapped into the phones of over 160 members of Congress. We're looking at Operation Arctic Frost. And they're trying to dig into that as well. But you're right, this weaponization of government, this very communist idea of I'm going to use intel agencies that are meant to capture terrorists to go after my own political opponents. And I'm going to use the government to take down a president who was duly elected and concoct this whole Russia collusion thing, which, by the way, also had really weird implications on our foreign policy, because all of a sudden the president couldn't deal with Russia in any normal way because he was being accused of having won because of Russia. This thing was so toxic, and it all starts with Obama. When you look at Mamdani winning here in New York City as a communist, don't think about Mamdani. Think about Obama. Everything bad that's happened. Go back to Obama.
My first question, by the way, if I was doing the interviews, would be, are you guys still dating? Because remember, Strzok and Page.
Strzok and Page, the lovers.
I think
the lovers who could smell the
trouble
Trump,
in paradise there.
They could smell the Trump voters in Walmart.
That's right.
Remember that?
They also said, we'll stop Trump. It's just unbelievable.
And welcome to Hannity. We start tonight with a Fox News alert. Major breaking news tonight. Former FBI Director James Comey, or as he likes to describe himself, Mr. Higher Honor, has been indicted by a federal grand jury in Virginia. Comey is now facing 2 charges: obstruction of a congressional proceeding and lying to Congress. If he is convicted, he will face 5 years in prison on each count. President Trump writing.
So the false statement. There's evidence that now, with the handwritten notes, that he congratulated the liaison, the person. I think he was also employed by the FBI as well, some kind of temporary employment. But he leaked the information, then emailed the person who he had leaked the information, saying, "Hey, good job." Then obstruction of a congressional proceeding. I mean, how many times can you lie? But this is just one example of a leak. Comey almost certainly leaked a whole bunch of information. Okay, the Steele dossier alone, and I'm not going to bring up, any names or whatever. There's a journalist in a left-leaning publication. How did he find out? There's numerous. How did they find out about the Steele dossier? So it was published by BuzzFeed, but how did these journalists find out about the dossier? It's not like Hillary Clinton had the Clinton newsletter. Well, actually, she did. It's called the New York Times and Washington Post. But the Clintons don't have a newsletter. Hey, check out the latest effort to sabotage our opponents. They don't have a newsletter. They just have American Media, which is their echo chamber newsletter. But how did American journalists, who shall remain nameless, it's public record, but how did they find out about the Steele dossier? Okay, they had sources. The sources leaked the information. That's how they found out. Everything was a leak. It was nonstop leaking.
On Truth Social tonight, quote, justice in America. Comey has been so bad for our country and is now at the beginning of being held responsible for his crimes against our nation. As I myself told James Comey right here on this show a long time ago, he has the right to remain silent. We'll remind him again. Take a look. By the way, the last thing we need are lectures from Jim Comey. And by the way, Jim, just a reminder, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you.
These 100%.
I think I'm in better shape tonight. Anyway, I predict that tonight is only the tip of the iceberg. Pay very close attention as we go through this all throughout the show tonight. This is going to have a cascading effect. The same James Comey that protected Hillary Clinton and looked the other way when her team, we'd never heard of BleachBit, using BleachBit to clean their servers and acid wash them, basically. They were full of top secret, classified information. Remember, he said, no reasonable prosecutor would prosecute. Remember,
they always phrase everything for the past 10 years within the framework of liberal sensibilities. Well, no reasonable prosecutor would. What do you mean reasonable? No liberal prosecutor? Oh, okay.
There were phones that were smashed with hammers and SIM cards removed from phones as well. Oh, and Joe Biden, of course, had top secret classified information. He didn't get raided. Hillary didn't get raided. No reasonable prosecutor would prosecute. Only go after Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago and go into Melania's closet. Tonight, well, they are not getting away with covering their tracks like she did. Attorney General Pam Bondi tonight writing on X, quote, no one is above the law. Today's indictment reflects this Department of Justice's commitment to holding those who abuse positions of power accountable for misleading the American people. We will follow the facts in this case. And, let's take this time right now to remind you of some of the facts in this case. On this program, we have spent years uncovering, unpeeling every layer of the onion of the Russia hoax and the lie. And it took a small ensemble cast, some of which will be joining us tonight, to get to the truth. We have been vindicated by the Horowitz report, the Durham report, over and over again, newly declassified information. But as alleged in this indictment, count one, on September the 30th, 2020, nearly 5 years ago, during a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, former FBI Director James Comey denied when asked that he had authorized the release of classified information to the news media by allowing a friend and a colleague of his to be cited as an anonymous source. Take a look at what Comey said that day. Take a look.
He then asked you, quote, have you ever authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports about the Trump investigation or the Clinton administration? You responded again under oath, no. Now, as you know, Mr. McCabe, who works for you, has publicly and repeatedly stated that he leaked information to the Wall Street Journal and that you were directly aware of it and that you directly authorized it. Now, what Mr. McCabe is saying and what you testified to this committee cannot both be true. One or the other is false. Who's telling the truth?
I can only speak to my testimony. I stand by what the testimony you summarized that I gave in May of 2017.
And that was an attempt to circumvent a perjury trap. But if everybody is allowed to answer in that manner, you would never have a truthful statement ever told. You could always lie, and I stand by that statement that I made 5 years ago. Okay, the statement was obviously that you were never part of a leak. Now you have articles being written, well, it was, he never specifically stated anything. He referred back to previous testimony. You can't pin him on that. And it's like, that's why he said, and Ted Cruz should have pressed the matter. He did a great job, but he should have said, okay, again, yes or no, were you ever part of a leak? And Comey was a lot more confident with the testimony with Grassley, because he was like, never, no, never. Here, it was still, 5 years ago, Trump was an outgoing president, and, Democrats had the momentum at their sails. And then, of course, Biden terrible presidency, kicked out by his own political party. Comey never imagined that Trump would be back as president. That's why he found seashells that said 8647, approaching the anniversary of Butler, Pennsylvania. And this is the man that wrote a book on loyalty and honor. How do you suddenly find seashells? Who puts 8647 in seashells on the beach? Another lie, a blatant, absurd, outlandish lie. But then, let's say he's telling the truth. There's like a 2% chance, not even 1%. Somebody puts 8647 on a beach someplace. Why would you do that on the year approaching the year anniversary of Butler, Pennsylvania? Why?
So your testimony is you've never authorized anyone to leak. And Mr. McCabe, if he says contrary, is not telling the truth. Is that correct?
Again, I'm not going to characterize Andy's testimony, but mine is the same today.
Mine is the same today. I'm not going to categorize Andy's testimony. There goes Elvis. Just anything but answering the question. So then articles can be written, well, he never really lied. He just referred back to, actually it's so confusing, honestly. Like, what was he referring back to? You can't pin him on lying.
Now, it turns out that appears to be a lie. Remember, Andrew McCabe leaked to the Wall Street Journal, we believe, at Comey's direction. Comey's own friend, a special government employee, Columbia Law School professor, leaking to the New York Times at Comey's direction. Now, on to count 2, the numerous other false, misleading statements Comey is accused to have made. In that exact same hearing, Comey was asked by Senator Lindsey Graham, who will join us in a minute, about a memo he received from the Director of National Intelligence, effectively making the investigation of Hillary Clinton's emails disappear, replacing it with the Russia hoax. Comey said he never remembered, had no clue what happened. Watch this.
So do you recall getting an inquiry from the the intelligence community in September 2016 about a concern that the Clinton campaign was going to create a scandal regarding Trump and Russia?
I do not.
You don't remember?
And that's a lie. Well, you can say, oh, I don't recall. Well, you know what? It's handwritten notes, so how can you not recall? It's a lie.
Remember getting a investigatory lead from the intelligence community? September the 7th, 2016, the U.S. intelligence officials forwarded an investigative referral of FBI to FBI Director James Comey and Assistant Director of Counterintelligence Peter Strzok regarding U.S. presidential candidate Hillary Clinton's approval of a plan concerning U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump and Russian hackers hampering U.S. elections as a means of distracting the public from her use of a private email server. You don't remember getting that or being taught that doesn't?
If you are sleeping in a
of a private email server. You don't remember getting that or being taught that doesn't
ring bells with me.
Okay.
Well, that's what John Solomon at Just the News and others found out. There were handwritten notes by Comey and emails by Comey, or handwritten notes at least, that memorialize him understanding that, yeah, there was a plan by Clinton.
Well, that's a pretty stunning thing. It didn't ring a bell, but it did come to you.
Now, Senator Graham was on this program that very same night. I asked him whether or not he believed James Comey. Here's a reminder.
All I can say is he has a convenient memory. He remembers what is damning to Trump, and when something is helpful to Trump, It's like Sergeant Schultz was in charge of the FBI. I see nothing, I hear nothing, I know nothing. It's hard to believe that the director of the FBI, in charge of an investigation of a sitting president, wasn't told, oh, by the way, the subsource who prepared the dossier, we think it's a Russian agent back to 2009. It's hard to believe they didn't tell the director of the FBI. The subsource tells us that the dossier is Bartok, not reliable, take it with a grain of salt. It's hard to believe that they don't tell the FBI director the CIA has warned us that the dossier prepared by Christopher Steele and a suspected Russian spy is all internet rumor. So here's Comey's problem. If one person can come forward and say, I briefed the director about the problems with the subsource, I told the director that the CIA was worried about the reliability of the dossier, then he is in big time trouble.
But nobody even has to come forward. There's already notes, that his own handwritten notes, and then there's likely emails, and everybody knew. It's not like Comey can say, "Oh, I didn't know." He's the FBI chief. He knew everything. Inherent in being the head of the FBI and the head of the CIA is that you pretty much know if Clinton is gonna, set up a rival. It's pretty obvious. If the average American knows that, so do you.
And Mr. Higher Honor allegedly didn't just lie during that hearing. He also appears to have willfully lied to.
Exactly. He signed FISA paperwork as well. Exactly.
A FISA court several times, saying that he had enough verified information to warrant the surveillance of American citizens, starting with Carter Page, backdooring into all things Trump world. He never did. And remember, the FISA law mandates that if you present information to a FISA court to spy on an American citizen and later find out that information was false, the law requires you to go back to the FISA court and correct the record immediately. It does not look like that ever happened. In fact, if Comey and his friends could do it all over again, we learned from a questioning of Senator Lindsey Graham, they never would have signed the FISA warrants. Why didn't they tell the FISA court that? Listen.
If you knew then what you know now, would you have signed the warrant application in June of 2017 against Carter Page?
No, sir.
Okay. If you knew then what you know now, would you have signed the warrant application?
No, I would not.
Well, I believe you didn't know that what you signed was wrong. The question is, if you had known, you wouldn't have signed it. Is that correct?
No, if I had known that it contained incorrect information, I certainly wouldn't have signed it.
Knowing then what you know now about all the things that we've come to find, would you have still signed the warrant application against Carter Page in October, January, and April?
No, I would want a much more complete understanding of what we were.
Thank you very much.
When you knew that, Mr. Higher Honor, why didn't you go back to the court? The current FBI director, Kash Patel, writing on X earlier this evening, quote, today, your FBI took another step in its promise to full accountability. For far too long, previous corrupt leadership and their enablers weaponized federal law enforcement, damaging once proud institutions, severely eroding public trust. Every day, we continue to fight to earn that trust back. And under my leadership, this FBI will confront the problem head on. Nowhere was this politicization of law enforcement more blatant than during the Russiagate hoax, a disgraceful chapter in history we continue to investigate and expose. Everyone, especially those in positions of power, will be held to account, no matter their perch. No one is above the law. You hear that, last part from the left all the time. No one's above the law, not even a former FBI director. Now, Comey's arraignment to face these charges will be on October the 9th. Earlier tonight, Mr. Higher Honor released this video on Instagram responding to the indictment. Take a look.
My family and I have known for years that there are costs to standing up to Donald Trump.
It was very lucrative. There were never any costs. The only costs were standing up to the people who framed Donald Trump. Now President Trump is finding out who committed criminal acts in setting up and framing him.
But we couldn't imagine ourselves living any other way. We will not live on our knees and you shouldn't either.
Does Comey know that Trump won every battleground state and the popular vote?
Somebody that I love dearly recently said that fear is the tool of a tyrant, and she's right. But I'm not afraid.
Tyrants set up and frame innocent people and help create a new Cold War, a McCarthy-era myth that Democrats still believe to this day.
And I hope you're not either. I hope instead you are engaged, you are paying attention, and you will vote like your beloved country depends upon it, which it does. My heart is broken for the Department of Justice, but I have great confidence in the federal judicial system.
Yes, it was so much better than when Clinton's Steele dossier was being filtered through the DOJ and FBI and CIA. Oh, the good old days.
And I'm innocent. So let's have a trial and keep the faith.
Let's have a trial, but he's trying to throw the trial out of court. Let's have a trial. I agree with the Honorable James Comey there.
I'm afraid of him. He's a weird guy. As I said, I predict that this is only the tip of the iceberg. Be on the lookout for superseding indictments, other jurisdictions, potentially other charges.
One even more.
They found the notes, they found the emails, they found everything that points to intent, which is the amusing term, the intent to set up and frame Trump. Anyway, hit subscribe. Go to H.A. Goodman's other channel right now. Share the latest segment. Watch it. Subscribe there to my super chat. Thank you so much, everybody. God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow morning, probably around 11 or noon for the last.